Hello from Beatty, Nevada. We are here today to go explore the mining ghost town of Rhyolite, which is only about 4 miles away from here. And we're going to see also what there is to offer here in the tiny town of Beatty itself, which only has a little over 1,000 people that live here. We are about 2 hours northwest of Las Vegas, kind of in the middle of nowhere. This area popped up actually as part of a ranch, but we'll get to that history in just a little bit later.
Today, Beatty is a small town that would be easy to overlook while traveling on Highway 95 either to or from Las Vegas. With just enough gas stations, hotels, and restaurants to keep the weary road traveler content, you might think that is the end of what Beatty has to offer, but you would be wrong. Beatty offers a very warm and connected feeling, since it is obvious that most of the locals know each other and thrive on the community connections they have. As was made well known when the owner of the restaurant I had lunch in, Gema's Cafe, came out and talked with many of the locals that were dining in. The cafe only has 5 tables, and the young lady who was working the tables was obviously a direct relative of the owner as well. In communities such as this, that's what keeps these places alive, creating that genuine sense of community and belonging. The food was pretty decent too. Just like a lot of Nevada, Beatty has some casinos, most notably the Stagecoach. And it appears that they are working on revamping the old Exchange Club casino into a steampunk-themed casino which has yet to open, the brainchild of artist James Henninger. Although Eddie World is just an oversized convenience store, it is actually worth a stop. It has a small food court inside, rows and rows of candy from the Death Valley Nut and Candy Company, some of which is made in-house, and some neat little gardens outside. The town has some public facilities, including a few churches, a senior center, a medical clinic, schools, and a justice building. There are also a few parks in town featuring sports fields, a playground, and a swimming pool. Although it didn't take very long to go through it, the Beatty Museum is well worth a visit, with 3 rooms of things to look at from local history. The building was originally a church with a colorful past. Inside, you can see everything from pictures and artifacts having to do with the nearby ghost town of Rhyolite, to tools and equipment that would have been used in the area, to machinery, furniture, and advertising that were all used in Beatty's past. There were musical instruments and Native American items, as well as art created by local artists and a few historical vehicles from the area. With free admission, it's hard to think of a reason not to stop at the museum, where you can learn all about the past of this area before going out and exploring this beautiful area more in depth on your own. Beatty is a town that was established in 1904 because of one man, Old Man Montilus Beatty, who purchased the Lander Ranch in 1896. After leaving military service, he would eventually settle here with his Paiute wife to farm and raise a family. His home was a common stop to miners traveling through the area. Old Man Beatty, the town's namesake, also served as the town's first postmaster. In 1904, when gold was found, the Bullfrog Mining District was formed. A town with water would be needed, and this is why Beatty began to grow, to serve as a supply center to all of the mining towns around it. In 1933, Beatty declared itself the gateway to Death Valley and has since catered to tourists and travelers alike. The town would also help staff, as it still does today, the Nevada test site, which was used during the development of the atomic bomb. 4 miles away is the ghost town of Rhyolite, which was definitely the highlight of my time in this area. I spent over 2 hours walking around this area, reading the history of each building, exploring the desert landscape, and learning about this town that seemed to be built up from nothing overnight and then faded away just as fast as it was built. This town peaked in 1907 with a population of anywhere from 3,500 to 5,000 people, depending on what source you look at, but due to many different financial factors would fade away to essentially zero by 1920. As you are entering into Rhyolite, there is an outdoor art installation from more recent years called the Goldwell Open Air Museum. However, I can't show you too much of that per the photography policy that was posted on their building front. However, there are some large interesting pieces of art that definitely don't feel like they belong at the entrance to an historic ghost town. The first major building that you come to as you enter town is Tom Kelly's Bottle House, which is also one of the very few complete structures left standing. If I looked around correctly, there are only 3 original buildings still standing in a somewhat intact form in Rhyolite. This bottle house is one of the only examples left in the United States today that is made up of this architectural style. Since wood is difficult to come by in the desert, many homes in the area were composed of adobe or brick, but some people got creative and used what they had on hand, bottles, to build houses, as you would with bricks with mortar in between the bottles. Yes, this was actually somebody's house. The creator of the house, Tom Kelly, used to buy used glass bottles from area kids at 10 cents per wheelbarrow load. Once the house was built, he never lived in it, but rather raffled the house off, selling 400 tickets at $5 apiece, which actually means that he took a loss of about $500 in the house, since he had spent more than he took in on the raffle in building it. The house, along with much of the rest of the town, has been featured in various movies through the years. The school is the next major building that you see on the street that brings you into town. Much of the school building is still standing, but sadly, it never really served much of a purpose. This is the second school building built in Rhyolite. The first school building was much smaller and much less extravagant. This massive concrete building featured galvanized Spanish tiles and a cupola with a bell. The school's construction was finished in 1909, 2 years after Rhyolite's population peaked and just before the closure of the mine, and would only remain in use until 1911, serving as the town's school for only 2 years, then left to sit vacant. Right across the road are the remains of the Miners' Union Hall, one of the most powerful groups in town, nearly since the town's inception. For $2 per month, anyone could join the union, which had benefits such as to cover funeral costs for miners, as well as provide hospitalization for any miners in need of those services with trained nurses. This large wooden plaque, which now hangs in the Beatty Museum, once hung here as a powerful symbol of the miners' union that served this town well. Today, however, not much remains here except for the walls of the basement and the crumbling stone of a union that once was a pillar of this community. Continuing through the commercial district of Rhyolite, we see the Overbury Building. The Overbury Building was built by John Overbury, who was already wealthy when he came to Rhyolite, entering town in what was described as a swell Oldsmobile. He began this building in 1906, and it was completed in June of 1907, right when the town was at its best and brightest. It was originally intended to be a 2-story building, but when Mr. Overbury saw that a 3-story bank was being built down the road, he immediately changed plans and made it a 3-story building, as well as being the largest stone structure in town. Through its useful years, it housed a stock brokerage firm, the First National Bank of Rhyolite, a dentist, and attorney's offices. By 1910, 3 years after it opened, the building was abandoned. Across the road from the Overbury Building was one of the most popular stores in town, the Porter Brothers store, which actually was a small regional chain of stores. It was said that at Christmas time, the displays at this store could rival the seasonal displays of any large city department store. In 1905, the Porter Brothers bought a lot on Main Street and operated their business out of a tent, but soon grew to the point that a real building was needed. This building opened in 1906 to quite the fanfare, including a live orchestra. It was the largest employer in town apart from the mines. The store would close in 1910 due to the town's population dwindling down. One brother, Hiram, would remain in town another 9 years though, serving as the Rhyolite postmaster until the post office closed in 1919. The Cook Bank Building is said to be one of the most photographed ghost town ruins in the entire state of Nevada. John Cook opened up this bank after having his first bank location in nearby Goldfield. After first renting a location on Main Street in Rhyolite in 1905, they built this impressive building, which was completed in 1907. The bank, which was 3 stories tall, housed the post office in the basement. Opulently built with marble staircases and mahogany accents, this was a tremendous show of wealth that was unmatched in town. It also had electric lights and indoor plumbing. As is the story for the majority of the town, the building was only used for 2 years, closing up in 1910, and its contents and fixtures sold off. Looking around from anywhere in town, it would be hard to miss the biggest intact building, the Rhyolite Train Depot. Rhyolite is unique in that 3 different railroads serviced the town. It was a huge benefit for towns in those days to have even one rail line service the town, but Rhyolite had an unheard of 3 rail lines. It is one of the best preserved examples of an early 20th century Mission Revival style train depot. The first train to stop in Rhyolite was on the Las Vegas and Tonopah line, stopping at 7 p.m. on December 14, 1906, with around 100 passengers. By 1907, freight had increased so much that a larger depot was needed, which is the structure you see here still standing today. It was built at a cost of $130,000, which would be nearly $4 million today. By 1908, more people were leaving Rhyolite than were coming to Rhyolite. The railroads took a loss year after year until eventually closing the station in 1919. This building remains standing here today mostly because it could not be moved when the town was being abandoned. In the 1930s, the building was purchased and used as a casino and brothel, eventually becoming a museum in the 1960s, and finally just shutting its doors. In 2000, the Bureau of Land Management acquired the property and is fundraising to fix up the train depot. It does not appear that much work is being done currently, though, other than the fence that surrounds the property. Just like many other Nevada mining towns, Rhyolite had a red light district. The people that worked in these areas were not really permitted outside of the red light district and were basically confined to the areas by the brothels that they served. This is what remains of the Adobe Dance Hall. This structure was built in 1905. At one end of the building, it was what is implied in the title, a dance hall and bar. Men could pay to dance with certain ladies in this part of the building. However, there were 4 small rooms, or cribs, in the other part of the building, which were used for more than just dancing. Multiple other brothels were in this part of town. The ladies that served these joints had developed a reputation. Some called them kind, others had different things to say. Either way, they were humans that all had a story to tell. One such woman was Mona Bell, born Sarah Isabella Peterson. A strange sequence of events would bring her to Rhyolite. After completing high school in Seattle, Sarah married a man named Cece and served as a dutiful wife. Together, they moved to Colorado, where Cece got in trouble for writing bad checks and left town. However, before he left town, he told his friend, Fred Skinner, to look after his wife. Sarah and Fred soon fell in love. Fred was a bad influence on Sarah, causing lots of trouble together as they made their way west. Once in Nevada, Fred is arrested with a $300 fine. In order to pay his fine, Sarah, now going by Mona Bell, takes up work in Rhyolite in the Adobe Dance Hall. On January 3, 1908, Fred shot and killed her. Although her actual grave is with her husband in Washington, this fake grave was created as a tourist draw for her, falsely stating that she could not be buried in the actual cemetery because of her career. Today, people leave gifts for Mona Bell to show that even a woman of her career was a person whose life mattered. Right in the same corner of town that houses the red light district is the town jail, built at a cost of $5,000. This building had just 4 holding cells, each cell only about 6.5 square feet in size. The building also featured a courtroom and the jailer's quarters. The only other building still intact in the town today is what is called the miner's cabin, although it may not have been a miner's cabin at all. Some say that it could have been a brothel. Some say that it could have been railroad offices, since it was not far from the railroad. However, whatever it was, it is one of the primary focuses of the BLM, as they strive to preserve what is left of the history of this town. Without Rhyolite, Beatty wouldn't be much to see, just a stop over on the highway between Reno and Las Vegas. However, Rhyolite makes the area such an interesting stop for anyone interested in local history. The ruins and buildings that remain in Rhyolite tell a fascinating story, a story that is continuing to be written as more of the ruins are uncovered and preserved. I hope to return in future years to see if there has been progress made on the preservation of the intact buildings. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video somewhere else down the road.